Hi everybody, and thanks for being here today. My name is Scott Webb and I'm a Trauma-Informed Care Coordinator with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. You're about to watch a video of a training presentation that we put together to help first responders. It's part of a statewide effort called Resilient Wisconsin. One goal is to help people who experience secondary trauma in their work. How? By helping them recognize the symptoms and risks associated with toxic stress, by saying it's okay to ask for help, and to provide tools, tips, and resources for self-care. With information like this, you and thousands of other Wisconsinites can build resilience. We'll start today with a quick quiz from a study that was done a couple of years ago. What percentage of U.S. firefighters do you think have been exposed to a traumatic event? What percentage of police and EMTs have? How about the percentage of first responders who've had symptoms from mental health issues? And how many first responders have received a mental health diagnosis? Were you surprised? Not surprised? Well, we all know these jobs are stressful. What I want to drive home to you today is what you may not know or what you may feel a little uncomfortable about. And that is, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to talk to a coworker or a loved one. It's good and healthy for you and for them. Your self-care and the support you not only get, but the support you give provide you with the resilience and strength needed to take care of yourself and others as well. Bottom line, strength is not sucking it up and keeping things inside. Strength is asking for help. And that's what's going to help us help bring these numbers down. We're here today to help give you an understanding of trauma in the lives of first responders and give you suggestions on how you and your coworkers can manage job-related stress. This training has been requested by multiple first responder groups across Wisconsin and was created by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services as a part of the Resilient Wisconsin initiative. This training program has been vetted and evaluated by your peers and other subject matter experts to provide the best understanding of trauma and coping techniques that can help you on the job and in your personal lives. There's an evaluation we'll ask you to fill out at the end so we can continue to learn from you and enhance the program's effectiveness. Thank you in advance for that. Here's what we'll cover today. Some of these things you already know a lot about, and some of these things may be new to you but are very important for you to understand. We'll review ACEs, risk factors and stressors, stigma, self-care, supporting others, and a lot of helpful resources. Our goals for this training are for people who experience trauma in their daily work to recognize the symptoms and risks associated with toxic stress, as well as the link to risk behaviors. We want to build support systems, the understanding of ACEs, and look at strategies for coping. Together, these things can help eliminate the stigma surrounding asking for help. We also hope to raise awareness and action for leadership so we can all prioritize better mental and physical health. Let's get into a few definitions here. Toxic stress happens to us for a variety of reasons. One is due to ACEs. Have you heard of ACEs? Adverse Childhood Experiences. There's a lot of information out on them now, and it's important to understand the role of ACEs in all our lives because they can impact some behaviors and actions we sometimes have as adults. What are some of these adverse childhood experiences? Let's take a look at a video that gives a good overview of ACEs and how they impact us.
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your risk for heart disease? If your mother had a drinking problem when you were growing up, are you more likely to suffer from depression as an adult? Here's what you should know about ACEs. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, extremely stressful events that can happen to a child growing up. Some experiences are so stressful that they can alter brain development, as well as the immune system, increasing the risk of lifelong health and social problems in adulthood. The term comes from the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, landmark research that shed new light on the root cause of everything from stroke and liver disease to substance abuse and mental illness. In the late 1990s, an epidemiologist from the Centers for Disease Control and a preventive medicine doctor at Kaiser Permanente set out to understand the association between childhood experience and lifelong health. They asked over 17,000 people in the Kaiser Health Plan in San Diego about their health history, as well as difficult questions about their experiences growing up. Anda and Felitti tallied up 10 different kinds of adversity in this largely middle-class and college-educated population. They were stunned to see how common ACEs were. 21% of all respondents were sexually abused as children. 19% grew up with someone who suffered mental illness. 28% had been physically abused. And 2 out of 3 respondents had experienced at least one ACE. The researchers next looked at how someone's ACE score, or the number of adversities they experienced, related to a wide array of serious health and social problems. They saw that the more ACEs someone had, the greater their risk for poor outcomes compared with someone with no ACEs. Someone with an ACE score of 4 had twice the risk of heart disease and cancer. Someone with an ACE score of 5 had an 8 times greater chance of being an alcoholic. And those with an ACE score of 6 or more, on average, died 20 years earlier. With every major problem they looked at in the ACE study, the risk went up for each additional adverse experience in childhood. As Dr. Robert Anda says, what's predictable is preventable. It's important to remember that ACEs are not destiny. ACEs are a tool for understanding the health of a population as a whole. For individuals, an ACE score can be a tool for understanding their own risk for health and social problems, and empower them to make changes for themselves and their children. ACEs tend to get passed down from generation to generation and are common across all income levels, races, and cultures. But increasingly, people of all different professions and backgrounds are coming together to discuss how ACEs affect their communities. They're finding new ways to treat and prevent ACEs. Many doctors are starting to screen their patients for ACEs as part of their medical history. More schools are becoming trauma-informed, considering the source of problem behavior when disciplining their students, instead of immediately suspending or expelling them. To learn more about interrupting the cycle of adversity and improving health and well-being for the next generation, please visit kpjrfilms.co.
Here are 10 of the most common ACEs. We want you to just understand that not only are your jobs stressful sometimes, but our own ACEs can add stress to what we do. And our hope is that some of the coping ideas we're going to share can help you better manage all the different kinds of stresses in your lives. ACEs are common and are in families of all incomes and races all across Wisconsin. The result of having ACEs in your life, they can cause stress and lead to mental health as well as substance use disorders. The good news is that ACEs do not have to be your destiny. Let's look at childhood. Here are 3 kinds of stresses that kids face. ACEs cause toxic stress in kids, not the kinds of positive or tolerable stresses that are a healthy part of growing up. ACEs cause toxic stress that can last for a long time and can be damaging. I'll read what these kinds of stress mean. Positive stress comes from events like meeting new people or getting a shot at the doctor. Kids react with small increases in heart rate and hormone levels. These are normal and essential parts of healthy development, and can happen in the context of stable and supportive relationships. Tolerable stress is a result of more severe, longer-lasting difficulties like the loss of a loved one, a natural disaster, or a frightening injury. This kind of stress activates the body's alert systems to a greater degree. It generally occurs in a limited time frame, which gives the brain an opportunity to recover from potentially damaging effects. No surprise here, first responders frequently encounter tolerable stress on the job. And remember, tolerable stress is typically manageable with supportive relationships and help. Understanding the causes of toxic stress, extremely harsh, harmful stress, is a big deal. They can come from ACEs and can continue through life with strong, frequent, and prolonged adversity. They include things like physical or emotional abuse, chronic neglect, substance abuse, mental illness, exposure to violence, or economic hardship. This kind of prolonged activation of the stress response systems can disrupt the development of the brain and other organ systems and increase the risk for stress-related disease and cognitive impairment into the adult years. But with adequate adult support, the toxic stress that comes from ACEs can be manageable. In addition to ACEs, external community factors can also cause toxic stress. Things like racism, sexism, stigma and discrimination, and bullying. Together, and with the tolerable stress that comes with the job, this combination can make it difficult for some first responders' bodies and brains to cope and heal. Toxic stress from ACEs actually causes changes in the brain. It affects the pleasure and reward center of the brain implicated in substance dependence. It changes the prefrontal cortex, which is necessary for impulse control and executive function, a critical area for learning. And on PET scans, there are changes to the brain's fear response center. The upshot? The high-risk behaviors exhibited by people who are exposed to extreme adversity are rooted in real, physical changes in their brain and nervous system. It wires the brain to look for danger everywhere. But even if you don't engage in high-risk behaviors, you're still more likely to develop heart disease or cancer because trauma impacts the stress response system that runs our fight-or-flight response. For example, you're walking along and you see a mountain lion. Immediately, your brain goes into fight or flight mode. It releases stress hormones and adrenaline. Your heart pounds, your pupils dilate, your airways open up, and you are ready to either fight that mountain lion or run from the mountain lion. That's a good response. But what happens when the mountain lion comes home every night and this system is activated over and over and over again? You go from life-saving mode to health-damaging mode. Kids are especially sensitive to this repeated stress because their brains and bodies are developing. So these repeated high doses of adversity not only affect brain structure and function, they affect the developing immune system, developing hormonal systems, and even the way our DNA is read and transcribed. Dr. Robert Bloch, the former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, said that ACEs are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. The scope and scale of the problem is large and overwhelming, but understanding it and addressing it as adults is where the hope lies. When we have self-care, protective relationships, support systems, human connection, and stress reduction exercises, we can manage the toxicity. The 2017-2018 Behavioral Risk Factor Survey data shows that 59% of Wisconsinites have at least one ACE, and 36% of Wisconsin residents have experienced 2, 3, 4, or even more ACEs. Now I'll show you a few more stats that show how ACEs impact so many people. People of color in Wisconsin have more ACEs. Lower incomes among adults in Wisconsin mean more ACEs. The more ACEs someone in Wisconsin has, the greater likelihood they may have poor mental health outcomes. Emotional abuse, which includes neglect, as an adverse childhood experience, exists in about 30% of Wisconsin adults. Among top types of household dysfunctions, substance abuse is at the top. 28% of Wisconsin residents grew up with someone who struggled with substance abuse. And look at the connection between current Wisconsin smokers and ACEs. Many adults with high ACE scores start smoking at a young age. That's because nicotine has a powerful temporary effect on the brain. In seconds, it can decrease appetite, relax muscles, and reduce stress, helping individuals who experience toxic stress return to baseline. But tobacco products are highly addictive and bring their own set of social, emotional, economic, and physical health challenges. Over the long term, tobacco use causes more stress than it relieves. In fact, 72% of all people who smoke in Wisconsin report having at least one ACE. So look at how an overall cycle of adversity happens. When you combine all those ACEs with toxic stress among first responders, it can lead to substance use and abuse. This cycle of adversity can be challenging to break, but the big thing to remember is that you can. The things we're discussing today, like talking to others about your feelings, self-care, and exercise, can help break that cycle for good. Now let's move on past ACEs. This quote sets the table for a powerful video from the Cleveland Clinic. It reminds us that even though it can be challenging, showing compassion and empathy day in and day out is so important, even in the face of compassion fatigue. As you watch, think about how this impacts you. Now we're going to take a look at some of the risk factors that happen as a result of the toxic stress experienced by first responders. It's tough to see this, but true. Some of the most recent data we have shows that first responders take their own lives at a rate that is just a little greater than those who fall in the line of duty. Does this surprise you? It happens about 10 times more than non-first responders. Substance use and binge drinking are additional tough realities in the cycle of adversity. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism External defines binge drinking as a pattern of drinking that brings a person's blood alcohol concentration to 0.08 grams per cent or above. This typically happens when men consume 5 or more drinks or women consume 4 or more drinks in about 2 hours. Take a look at the role of alcohol among law enforcement officers. The fact is, alcohol can get in the way of you coping with toxic stress. So can drugs. Together, it's even harder. And across the country, we're seeing prescribed and non-prescribed opioids causing great harm. Again, it's okay to ask for help. Sleep deprivation is another factor in the cycle. 72% of EMTs suffer from sleep deprivation, which can also lead to addiction in many individuals. So it's sad, but not surprising that depression can be a result of that cycle of adversity. And some of the ways our first responder brothers and sisters try to cope can only make that cycle tougher to break. It's important to understand here that most folks think opioids come from street dealers, but that's not the reality. Almost 84% come from friends and relatives. So what can our coworkers and friends and family see in someone who might need help as a result of all this? Let's take a look at another video called On Losing a Patient. It shows a fire captain from Rhode Island who had those harder moments that made him question whether he could keep going due to the stress of the job. Sometimes those on your call make it. Sometimes they don't. Maybe you've had those moments questioning why you're doing this and how you can keep going.
I'm Michael Morse. I'm retired now, recently rescue captain, Providence, Rhode Island. I spent 23 years, 10 on a fire truck, engines and ladder companies, then the latter 13 on a rescue, as a rescue tech, then a lieutenant, and finally as a captain. The call came in for a student who fell off the roof at Providence College. So we were right next to it, so we took the call. It was 3 a.m, and we get a lot of these calls from kids, college kids fall off balconies and roofs and things, and it's usually not too bad. I mean, they're broken up pretty good, but not like this. I guess he had crawled out of a window onto the roof of a 10-story dormitory building. Him and a friend have a smoke. It was icy out, and he slipped, and he went over the edge, and he fell 80 feet onto the cement. And we pulled up the hill in the rescue. Engine company was on the way, the police were on the way, but we just happened to be next door. And it was just horrifying. It was just, I'd never seen anything quite so horrific, and the person still be alive. I'd seen other things, but they weren't alive, but this guy was still alive. And it was right around Christmas break. All decorations were out, and everybody was kind of festive, and there he was. And we got him in the rescue, and he was just broken up. His teeth were falling out of his mouth, and his eyeballs had popped out, and his arms were like hinged. And he managed somehow through these broken arms and bones to grab onto my wrist while I was trying to help him. He was struggling, doing IVs and stuff. And I'll never forget his eyeball that was on his cheek just popped up and made eye contact with mine. Never, I will never forget that moment. And there was actually bleeding in his eyes that weren't even attached. But we got him to the hospital, and he did die eventually. But his parents made it to the hospital before he did, so I guess that was kind of a small victory. Another Providence College, a week later, a young girl had vomiting, and she had been sick for a while. And so they called us for a ride to the hospital. Turns out she had bacterial meningitis. And it was so different from the trauma call, but it was just as horrible because those kids die all the time with bacterial meningitis. So we took her to the hospital, and they didn't know if it was a seizure, she fell, or she had a head injury. And I didn't know either, but she had seized like 10 or 12 times in the rescue. And the same rescue the kid had died in, or almost died in, the week before. And the connection, it was the same school, the same age. I had daughters the same age in school. And it was just, it's kind of like something went off in my head. Like, if this kid doesn't make it, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I wouldn't have. I truly would have left. Not the job. I would have gone back to the fire truck. And it's a lot less personal on the fire engine. You go in, you do your job, the EMS guys come and take them away. Or you go to fires or electric, things like that. But the EMS thing, I got into it because I enjoyed the personal connections that I was making, but these were a little too personal. And anyways, throughout the night, I was working 38 hours straight. I kept going back and checking on her. Then her family started coming in, and she wasn't supposed to make it. But through some miracle, she did, and she lived. And the family was awesome. They actually invited me to her college graduation, kept in contact, and actually dedicated my second book to her and the boy that fell off the roof. So those are a couple of good story, bad story. It all equals out somehow. You end up doing a long career, and it's enjoyable, and it's trying. Even talking about it's trying.
Here are some signs that you may see in coworkers or yourself that can indicate that it may be time to reach out for some help. And these are more signs that someone may need help. Now, there's a lot of heavy information I've been showing you today. But again, we just wanted to find a few things to help you understand what can cause some of the feelings that you and your coworkers may experience sometimes. So, what gets in the way of asking for help? In first responder culture, there is this idea of the stigma of silence, also known as hero stigma. Hero stigma is the main reason first responders don't reach out for help. The public has a hero perspective of police, firefighters, and other first responders saving lives. EMS and their supervisors hold high standards coupled with public scrutiny. When they don't live up to these standards, they feel like a failure at work. Next, let's take a look at a video we created that shows some Wisconsin first responders and how they deal with stress and trauma in their jobs and lives.
I remember doing chest compressions on the dad for, felt like an eternity. Dried the daughter out. She didn't survive either.
The car crashes, the gunshot wounds, the fights, the domestic stuff.
I was really angry that the person didn't live, and I blamed myself. I thought I didn't do something right.
It's hard. It's really hard.
You just feel that overwhelming sense of, it's just too much.
If we bottle up those thoughts and those concerns, it's not healthy for anybody.
Everybody gets affected by it.
And you just go, I gotta find a way to move forward. It's okay to ask for help.
Sometimes we need help fast, maybe during a tough call or when thinking about one, maybe when you see or think about something that brings back a hard time. So here are some simple, fast things you can do to help yourself just about anytime, anywhere. We're going to do a quick exercise right now that is one you can use almost anytime or anywhere. It's as simple as it gets, breathing. You may have heard about it or tried it. It's one of the oldest ways we can instantly feel more calm, relaxed, and in control. It'll give you more oxygen in the bloodstream and can even help you get to sleep. It's called 4-7-8. All you need to do is close your eyes, inhale through your nose as you count to 4 in your head. Hold your breath for 7 seconds. Then exhale through your mouth for 8 seconds. Let's try it. Close your eyes, inhale through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And exhale through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can you feel the difference? Try this cycle 5 times anytime you can when you want some relief. Practicing resilience building techniques like 4-7-8 breathing can be a great step for self-care. Those fast ideas can work in the moment, but on a day-to-day basis, here are some ideas that will help your mind and body get a little more fine-tuned every day. That's a tactic that first responders use so that when the next tough call comes, or lousy week, or traumatic event overall, they're better able to cope and get through it. The last one, getting enough exercise, has some pretty powerful benefits, especially for first responders. And it's not just that exercise helps us haul the fire hose or keep our stamina up during long shifts. Here's the idea. The brain reads a drop in blood sugar as danger and begins to produce adrenaline. Adrenaline can be produced in a split second, making you feel tense, jittery, weak, and dizzy. With someone who suffers from PTSD, these constant drops in blood sugar can cause mood swings into panic, anger, or desperation. But exercise does some amazing things to combat that. It rebalances your melatonin, which helps you sleep better. It promotes tryptophan, which enhances rest, sleep, and relaxation. It releases endorphins, which can make you feel better. And because sleep deprivation keeps the nervous system on high alert with elevated cortisol, we need the benefit of enough exercise. It's a proven, natural way to keep our blood sugar at more normal levels while helping us get a better night's sleep. I showed you some quick, in-the-moment things you can do to help you immediately try to manage stress. And I showed you some more long-term, day-by-day things you can do to help your brain and body cope better. Since this presentation is about getting us all to feel more confident about talking to people to help us better manage stress, I'm going to give you another short exercise you can do with a fellow first responder. Take 10 minutes and just have a quick conversation about what you can do to take care of yourself. Maybe you'll share some of the things you've seen here today, or maybe you have some extra ideas to share. The idea is to discuss and learn from each other about what works for you, because maybe there's an idea from someone that'll work for you too. If you heard of a new idea, a different thing you haven't tried before, please write it down. Think about it later, and definitely give it a try. What about being there for someone else? What do you do? How can you really be there when someone needs to talk? Maybe someone had a recent traumatic situation or got into an environment that triggers an old trauma. It might be obvious, it might not. And you find yourself asking, how do I help my buddy? Active listening is a skill that can be acquired and developed with practice. It means fully concentrating on what is being said, rather than just passively hearing the message. You're focused, attentive, and listening more than talking. Let the person know you hear them, that it's normal to feel stress. Let them know if you can help or if you can refer them to others for help. The goal is to be there in the moment for them to help them avoid re-traumatization. I want to share this true story with you. It was written by the mother of a first responder who really struggled with some recent calls. For this first responder, faith was important to him. This call really affected him. I will share the rest of the story in a bit. I've got your six means I've got your back. First responders do this on the job all the time. We're there for each other. But what about when we're not on a call? We're going to do one more quick exercise. I want you to make 2 short lists. Write down 6 names. Those are 6 people who you feel you can ask to have your back when you need to talk and when you need support or a shoulder. Then write down 6 names of people you'll be there for. After the video, let the first 6 folks know that you may need to talk to them someday. Get their number if you don't have it already. And let the next 6 folks know that you'll be there for them, and give them your number. Remember, it's okay to ask for help, right? What's your anchor? What helps you? What grounds you when life storms hit you? Maybe you have a few. We need to be open and try new things and keep doing the ones that help us best. So what gets in the way of asking for help? Stigma, for one. It can prevent folks from seeking treatment. Only about 22% of people in Wisconsin who may need it request help. For example, most people who continue to overdose are not seeking a high for their recreational use. They are simply trying to feel well. And without treatment and recovery services, it's nearly impossible for a person with an opioid use disorder to overcome their addiction. Opioids damage the brain, and the person with opioid use disorder is unable to make rational decisions. PD2 Recovery is a statewide initiative that connects people who have overdosed on opioids or stimulants with a peer recovery coach. The recovery coach is a person in recovery with a lived experience of substance use disorder and overdose. The coach helps get the person into treatment immediately and helps them through their recovery journey. Again, it's okay to ask for help. Okay, let's go back to the story of a first responder profoundly affected by some calls he was on. Again, his mother wrote this. She ended the letter with, "You explained to me how God killed a 2-year-old but let someone else live." This first responder took his own life. How many stories like this play out in the first responder community? Remember the slide comparing line of duty deaths to suicides? This man lost his faith, his anchor. The toxic stress he felt was corrosive to his well-being and his ability to cope. He may have been burned out. He failed to notice it. He may have been someone with a high ACE score and was just trying to make it through life. The story is a big part of why we're here today having this training discussion. We're in this together. Nobody's alone here. We want to help and see each other succeed in life and get help if we need it. Any one of us can help any one of us. We can take care of ourselves and each other. We can do this. We showed you some things today that you can do on your own and how you can be there for others. So let's remember, we can really make a difference. I hope you got a lot out of this today. It's tough stuff, but the more we learn, the more we try some of the things you saw today, the better we can cope with toxic stress as first responders. If you feel any colleagues would benefit from this video, feel free to pass it along. And remember, folks, it's okay to ask for help. Stick around as we share some great resources to check out. Thanks for watching.